and the moderator of the panel. Just prior to the panel, I put together some thoughts on the film, and I'm just going to read them. No, I'm not going to read them directly. I think the film is a really interesting topic. I think particularly the intersection of disability and sexuality is quite telling, because I feel like sexuality is a quintessential piece of what it is to be human. The question of sexuality really speaks to sort of the human condition. So I feel like when we erase sexuality from disability, we're almost removing the humanity from the experience of being disabled. So I'm very excited to have a panel to better unpack that. And
why don't we start with Fran? Always a good idea to start with Fran.
Okay, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here, and this is my second time watching the movie, and I have to say I love it even more. You know, there's lots of things that are in this film that it just makes it a really well-rounded sort of perspective, and not just the dominant narrative around what it means to live with disability. And to kind of go back to what Samantha was saying is, I really appreciated the fact that there was this intersecting piece around sexuality as part of being human. Because I think oftentimes disability and sexuality are two terms that are often viewed as mutually exclusive. And they aren't associated with looking at the broad perspective of what it means to be human and also living with disability. You know, one of the things that I really thought was interesting is I know that the law has changed as a result of sort of the lobbying that occurred around this film, and I'm happy, so thrilled to hear that. And and I hope that for so many people as a result of this change, there is going to be lots of sex. Really. You know, who are we protecting people from? Right, is that assumption that we're protecting people from others, but I think there's such a fear that we need to have information and opportunities out there that aren't taking people's experiences away. And you know, the real piece about dignity of risk, which is something that we don't think about and is often taken for granted, was so beautifully sort of addressed in this film, I think, in lots of ways. So, yeah.
that was great. That was on time and everything. Thank you. Doris?
Okay. So I am going to read from my notes, because if I speak from them, you'll be listening to me for 20 minutes. I can't do what Fran does. But I think I just want to throw out some thoughts, and I know we want to have a discussion afterwards, which is really the important part. But I guess first and foremost, I just want to applaud the filmmaker for a very well executed story and tremendous characters and amazing actors. I thought it was just really stood out. But we were asked to talk about issues related to disability, sexuality, and consent. But after I saw the film, it occurred to me that the filmmaker, I thought, was tackling a much, much bigger issue. And I guess the question I think the filmmaker was giving to us was, what kind of world have we created? It seems to me that Len Collin, through the situations and the stories that he developed, is inviting us as a viewer into a metaphorical or miniature version of the many barriers we impose on those that don't fit into the mainstream version of normal. Collins is talking about issues of control, surveillance, and the management of people's lives. And because of intentional segregation, the dominant society doesn't know certain groups of people as people. That is, we have been so distant from our shared humanity. In this world, this micro world that he created, we see a group of people being released from prison into newfound freedoms. We all want access to the same things in life. As one of the characters said, a proper job like Larry has. able to relax and have a few beers at a local pub and be romantic and do romantic things, to be in love and maybe a family someday. But as we see these very basic things are denied to this group of people, the filmmaker asks, what happens when you get to know people who seem so different than ourselves? Well, they are flirty, they're know-it-alls, they're eccentric, they're nurturing, they're competitive, they're witty, they're clear about what they like and dislike and how they want to be treated. That is what happens when you get to know people who are different than ourselves. We realize that we're all just people, diverse and individual, needing of friendships and wanting to be loved. But we segregate, we congregate, we overprotect, and we don't allow us, as Fran said, the dignity of risk. When you exclude groups of people, then the consequences is what we saw. For example, you don't realize you can't drink when you're on medications. Therefore, my main takeaway really is to tackle the question, what kind of world did we create? A world where we are kept so distant from our common humanity. A world so complex and untidy that a supporter or an ally will now have to face harsh consequences for understanding. And those who dare to dream, like Sophie and Larry, will need to be ready to fight for that dream. And I think I'll leave it with Sophie, who got to the core, I think, to the theme, when she said, well, would you like to be a father? That is, if all the things that are in the way somehow magically disappear. The ending was realistic, because all the things in the way will not magically disappear. But something changed as we see them, I think, in the bus ride back to the center. All those things in the way have to be taken on full force now, because there's no going back.
Thank you, Doris.
Hi, yeah, I just want to say thanks for having me in this panel, Angela, who reached out to me. I first saw the video on email that was sent to me with a password, so I watched it and I was very touched by the video and also by the characters that were so really prompt into their character. I mean, it was a magical thing. And what it brought to my attention was how it kind of related to parts of my life as well, growing up with myself with a disability and not able to have normal fun sex with my partner because of the group home staff and all those kind of things. They're saying you're not able to have sex because you don't know anything about sex. You don't know anything about pregnancy. But now as I grow up and I take the parts from the video that I really learned, and the video really touched me in so many ways. My emotions is all in a big circle, and I'm trying to make a key to open it to make it come out. But the characters did an amazing job. And to be funny, I actually have two of the characters in the movies actually on Facebook, and we chat a lot, so it's kind of cool. And it's very touching how we have that connection with the community. But now I realize from the video and learning and visualizing it as an educational tool that it's very important, and I'm very thankful that now the law has changed, because I think it's very pathetic that folks with intellectual disabilities or any type of disability and Down syndrome should be able to love who they want and be who they want. And also, love is love no matter what gender or sex or race or whatever. I think it's a big thing that society needs to really look on. I think it's very powerful that I learned from this. And coming from myself now as a transgender 30-year-old with an 8-year-old daughter, I'm very proud of myself. And yeah, I think I learned so much from this video, and I'm very happy, and I hope that the video goes out there more and more, because I think a lot of people out there are still struggling with this crap that still happens in society. And yeah, I'm just very touched by it, and I'm very thankful that I'm here again today with everyone, and thanks for coming out and supporting us in the video, especially the videos. It's amazing, especially.
Thanks so much for sharing. That's very emotional. And now Sue?
Great. I love how Rainbow always brings the love into it, right? You do.
I think from the heart.
You bring it right back to the love, which I think we're all capable of love. Everybody wants to be loved and everybody wants to love, which is kind of the concept of this film too. Following up on these amazing things. So Angela brought me in here to talk a little bit about the legal stuff. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a social worker, but as Samantha was saying in the introduction, I'm on secondment at Arch Disability Law Center, so I'm hanging out with a lot of human rights lawyers these days. I'm the one social worker among all these lawyers. and self-advocates. And Shanika, you should stand up over there. Shanika is back here. She's one of our very active self-advocates with Respecting Rights. I think you're the only one here right now from Respecting Rights. Yeah, we have, so we work in, Lorraine from Self Advocate Council. So we work in a partnership with Respecting Rights at Arch Disability Law Center, in which we like to call it triple scoop. We work with a person with a disability, with a lawyer, and with an advocacy staff. So we always have that legal perspective, the perspective of the person with the disability, and an advocacy staff and developmental services. So I wanted to say a few things. So we talk in talking about legal issues, and I think that's the amazing thing that we're also struck by with this film, is that they were actually able to use this art form to change the laws and to influence laws, to do law reform work, which is a big part of what we do at Arch with Respecting Rights. Interestingly, so we have the UN Convention, right, on the rights of persons with disabilities. We have these amazing, powerful laws, these provincial laws, these federal laws, yet people are still having the rights taken away every single day. Values and attitudes are still some of the issues that we have to tackle, right? We get calls on a regular basis around people having the rights to make their own decisions taken away, whether it be about sexuality or anything in their lives. And again, especially the CRPD, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it says all persons with a disability, regardless of the level of disability, is presumed capable, right? Presumed capable under the law. So we need to know, thank you, right? So, and that's a legal issue. So people have the right to make their own decisions about relationships. People have the right to make their own decisions. If somebody wants to masturbate in their room, they can do it. And they don't need group home staff. You were talking about group home staff coming in and interfering. People have the right to exercise all aspects of themselves. So what we need to tackle, and I like what both Fran and Doris were saying too, is we need to tackle the attitude, what world do we want to be living in, right? So we need to continue to tackle these things. Every day have those conversations. Have those conversations with people. One more thing I just wanted to mention. So it's the entrenchment. I think the entrenchment of these attitudes that we have to keep fighting. I do want to do a quick shout out. Now, I put a bunch of flyers out there, Arch Disability Law Center. If anybody has any issues, it's free, funded by Legal Aid of Ontario, any disability related issues. The information's out there, please grab it. I also really want to draw people's attention to wildfire. And these are things thank you to Angela Bradley, who's turned us onto all these great things. But have you guys heard of Wildfire yet? So Wildfire is a theater production that is currently running, which is all around sexuality and intellectual disability, same issues. It's with a cast of people who all have Down syndrome. Very, very provocative, amazing, amazing theater production. I highly recommend you go check it out. It's Soul Pepper Theater right now. So thank you. You're going to ask us questions later, right? And got us push us a little bit more? Yeah.
Great. Now I'd like to invite Anna and John to give their perspective.
Hi, this is Anna Drakes, and I'm just talking about my life with community living, and they helped me out so much of getting married and a lot of things going on. And John and I were married, and we married in 2011, and we met in 2016. Or was it? No, 2009. Oh, 2019. 2009. Oh yeah. So we met in 2009, and we had a nice relationship with me and John, and we did okay. We're doing okay. Yeah. And one more thing. My sister, her name is Angie, and she's my guardian, and she helps me out a lot too. So like when I need something from her, she's always around. So and so.
You go.
Okay, all right. So and I have lots of friends, and they help me out a lot too. So so we're doing great.
That's great. Oh, good.
Are you sure? Take this one over.
Hi, this is my first time, and my name is John, and I got a beautiful wife. Her name is Anna. She's from Italy. I love her so much. I like her parents. They're beautiful. So I'm a hard worker. I'm a dishwasher. So I keep my apartment nice and clean. And my wife, she's a good cook. Trust me, she is. And I love Anna's parents. I love Anna's friends. They're so nice to me. So I'm nice to myself, and I love Angie. She's beautiful, and she got a beautiful daughter. Trust me.
Thank you so much, John and Anna. I think it's really important that we have folks here sharing a lived experience of love and disability, and having the opportunity to get married. I think it's great to talk about theory and concepts and policy, but the lived experience is really what creates dimension and brings these issues to life. So thank you so much for your thoughts. Now we're going to open up for audience questions. So I hope you have lots of questions, and please speak clearly, and we have a couple runners with mics. Does anyone have a question? Can you put your hand up?
I find that the school system does not educate anybody with special needs. I mean, me and my husband tried to pursue them 2 years ago to encourage so they can learn. I know also within the school system they don't talk about gays or lesbians, which is natural nowadays. And a lot of parents remove their child when they are taught in the public school system. But I know my son is interested in learning about sexuality, but there's no education available within the school.
That's a great point, that access to education around sexuality is super important, and also incredibly important for students with disabilities. Does anyone on the panel want to speak or comment on that? I could address it. Does the panel want to address it?
No, I don't. Samantha, go ahead, get us started.
Okay, so my commentary on access to sexual education for students with disabilities would be that the first point would be that it's important, but I also think it speaks to both access for the individual as well as who we imagine within our societies and the social position of disability. So I often think about when we go to school, we're really encouraged to imagine what our life is going to be like when we're an adult, what our role is going to be in the community. So if you think back to school, in high school, you're constantly preparing for, are you going to go to college, are you going to go to university, trade school? So you're imagining who you're going to be in society. And if there's not that access to sexual education for students with disabilities, we have this sort of erasure of, we're not imagining you as a sexual being, as someone who's going to have a relationship. So that's my commentary, that the access to education speaks both to the individual need as well as the social position of disability. Anyone else? Do we have any other comments from the audience, questions?
I just want to know, was Ireland the only place where it was illegal to have any sexual contact if they were not married?
So the question is Ireland, or was Ireland the only place where folks with disabilities, where it was illegal for folks with disabilities to have sex if they were not married?
I don't know if it was actually illegal here. I don't know. Anyone know? Anyone got their like handy dandy?
Yeah, historically, no, Ireland
No?
wasn't alone.
I beg your pardon, can someone bring Diane a microphone?
Thank you. Historically, no, Ireland wasn't alone. It was as recent as the 50s or 60s that in some provinces in Canada, you weren't allowed to cohabitate if you had a disability. So props to Len Collins, but I think he's showing something that many people have experienced in their lives.
Hi. Do I have a couple of minutes?
Yes.
Just to ask a question. I'm just wondering if you're aware of what actions are taking place in the school systems for young people living with disability in terms of relationship, mental health, intimate relationships, period. It's been a gap for a long time, so I'm just wondering if we've been able to make things move forward yet.
That's a great question. And do any of our panel members who are involved in training?
Diane might be very interested in this. We haven't appointed Diane. Oh, you pointed me. Yeah.
So Sue Hutton has once again thrown to Diane in the crowd.
Because these legal issues come up very regularly these legal issues come up very regularly at Arch, and Diane's sitting kind of in the center of a lot of these. So Diane, can you, sorry to point you out again.
Well, I think that one of the things that we can all participate in as parents, siblings, people ourselves who are part of the educational system is to invite people to come and speak at schools. There are lots of organizations around the province, and especially in Toronto, who, if you ask them, will come. And they can speak to an auditorium full of students. I'm not aware of what curriculum standards are, but I do know that there have been some very active groups of young people who do come to schools to talk about these issues. And as I say, if you invite them, they'll come.
Fantastic. Thank you, Diane, and I appreciate this back and forth. There was a question in the front row. Can someone bring a microphone, please?
Thank you. This is also sort of a legal question. I don't know who's best to answer it. Fran might have some information. So I'm new to Ontario. I've been working in Nova Scotia doing work with support workers around how they can be supportive of folks having sex. I'm disabled as well. But so in Nova Scotia, I know that there is things that support workers are allowed to do. And I'm curious if there's any federal laws around the role that support workers can play in facilitating sex between clients. If there is, like what, I think, okay, yeah, can somebody tell me a bit about what's happening with support workers?
So I think federally there isn't anything. I think what's happening is that each province is probably starting to look at this more seriously. So the Sexuality and Access project that I worked on with Springtide Resources was actually going out and talking to providers of attendant services about the fact of the matter that people who are using attendant services are sexual. And that, you know, if we don't start talking about this more openly, it's going to continue to remain underground. And that really does put people at risk. It puts the worker at risk, and it puts the individual themselves at risk. So there has been some movement with some of the attendant service providers to really start thinking about this critically and having some policies in place to support both the individuals who are service users and the attendant workers. So it's very slow. very, very slow. And in BC, there is some work in long-term care facilities to really look at this again much more seriously than just a sort of on an individual basis. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have time for one more question. Does anyone have a closing question? Yes. Oh, wait, could we bring this person a microphone, please?
I don't need one.
Got one right?
I'm just wondering how you proposed. If you could share that.
The question is, how did John propose?
That's me.
Yes, John.
I suppose, well, when I first met Anna at the dance, I proposed to her at the dance. When I first met her, I met her at Bright Hill. Then we went to school together. Then I met her at school. Then we went to hang for handicapped people, and I met her there. Then she come to Toronto. She was 2 years old. She's from Italy, so I never been there. Her parents been there. I haven't. So, compared to me, she's beautiful. She's a beautiful wife, and I still love her in my heart. And I'm telling you one thing: she's a good cook. I'm not a good cook. I'm not a cook. So you gotta ask me more questions. I got a job. I'm a dishwasher. I love it. So I'll pass it to my wife. She's next. Anna, you got more than me. I think my wife's just done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John, did you go to 519?
Yes, I did.
That's where I knew you from too.
Yes, I used to work there, but it's not there anymore. It's gone.
I know.
So I used to work for the handicapped people. At I used to be a security guard. I used to get $10, so it was good for me. Yeah, but it didn't last. 519 Club, so I used to work there. So that was it. So, any more questions?
And I also work at Dean.
Where?
I work at
Oh, that's good.
John is clearly a popular guy. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
You're welcome.
Okay, so at this point we're out of time. Those were great questions, and I really appreciate the audience participation. At this point, I'd like to thank Community Living Toronto and MNJCC for asking me to moderate tonight. It's been really fun, and I've learned quite a bit. The panel was incredibly insightful and very multifaceted. I again really appreciate John and Anna sharing their lived experience. And there's clearly a wealth of knowledge in policy and practice on the panel as well. At this time, I would like to invite the Vice President of Community Living Toronto's Board of Directors to come up and say a few words. Victor, are you? I will let Victor pronounce his own last name because I'm very nervous to butcher it.
Figueredo.
Figueredo.
You say figure it out, you're pretty close.
Thank you.
I am going to use my notes. In fact, I'm going to put my glasses up because I don't have my reading glasses. Thank you, Samantha. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who are not familiar with Community Living Toronto, we're an association whose mission is to change the lives of, change the lives of people with intellectual disabilities by giving them a voice and supporting them in their choices of where they live, work, play, and I'm missing one. Learn. Anyway, so on behalf of the Board of Directors of Community Living Toronto, we would first like to thank you in the audience for coming out tonight and supporting this film festival and supporting accessibility, diversity, and inclusion. Tonight's topic of disability, sexuality, and consent is so important to help all of us think differently and accept choice for everyone. As Samantha said, sexuality is part of the human condition, whatever your choice. We can't and shouldn't ignore it. Samantha, thanks again for all your remarks as well as for guiding this conversation. I know moderating is not always easy, but with the fabulous panel that's been put together for tonight, I'm not surprised that you were willing to do this. So I'd like to thank all our panelists as well. You have each helped broaden our hearts and open our minds. We know that sharing your stories and experiences is very personal, not to mention doing it in front of everybody here. It truly means a lot to us that you were willing to come out and share this with us. Along with our sincere thanks, we have a small gift for each of you to show our appreciation. I think somebody's going to hand those out to you. So thank you very much. To the Miles Nadal Jewish Community Center and the whole crew behind the organization of the Real Abilities Film Festival, we are so appreciative that you have brought this festival to Toronto and included such an amazing group of organizations, including Community Living Toronto. So thank you, JCC. Thanks also to all our volunteers tonight, Jason who filmed the panel discussion, Louis our photographer, Jules and Janaea for handing out programs at the door, and thank you to the great public relations and fundraising staff at Community Living Toronto. And in conclusion, this topic is too important for us to not talk about, and we hope that the conversation will continue beyond tonight. To assist in that effort, we have covered the event on Facebook Live and across many social platforms using social tags that are in your programs. We have also posted many resources on the Community Living website, which is www.communitylivingtoronto.ca. Please use these resources and share them. If you have other related material to contribute to the conversation, please send them to us. The more information and tools we make available to everyone, the better. We look forward to being social with all of you. So once again, on behalf of CLT, thank you all and good night.